Good afternoon, Madam President. Over the years, I've heard our state budget described in many different ways. Some have called it a blueprint, even a vision of the party in power's plan for the future. And I don't disagree with that. It's definitely true that a budget is a symbol of our priorities. And properly crafted, it should have a vision for the future, and it should have a plan. I got my first look at this state budget that's before us to be voted on yesterday morning. And thankfully, the House of Representatives spent the full day into the evening debating it. So I actually had more chance to look at this state budget than I think any other one that I've ever had the opportunity to vote on. And here it is, 572 pages. This is printed double-sided. Madam President, there are a lot of concerned and angry people in our state. And I took that to heart when I read this state budget. And based on my review, I would submit that the priorities that are contained therein are at best questionable priorities. And I mean no disrespect to the people that have worked on it, but plainly speaking, I don't sense any plan whatsoever. Only a cobbled together collection of new revenue and increased taxes designed to plug holes left by the decreasing revenue streams and increased debt we have been facing. And also designed to continue to grow government even further, creating more and more dependence on our state government, while adding more and more burdens on those working harder than ever to make ends meet. The choice Connecticut must face before long is whether we will continue to operate this way. Growing government and its monstrous appetite, or instead growing our economy and the freedom and wealth that will result from doing so. For me, this budget vote, the question that really matters is, do the people of Connecticut benefit from this policy? Will businesses see this budget as a change in the direction of the state that is sorely needed to make Connecticut more attractive? In sections 232 through 235, the Paid Family Medical Leave Act language is finalized. And I don't want to rehash the entire debate since it was a lengthy discussion in both chambers. But this mandate on small businesses with as little as one employee to accommodate someone leaving and having to replace them in the short term and then have to account for them when they return, including getting rid of the employee that replaced them. The burden on that small business from managing that situation and then ultimately likely having to pay for additional unemployment claims is something that is sending a message to the business in our state, the businesses in our state. The previous speakers have already discussed the 1% prepared food tax that will apply to everything that is food or drink related. You name it. You buy prepared food anywhere, in a restaurant, in a grocery store, from a vending machine, you will have to pay. In Section 368, the Office of Policy and Management, which is the governor's office, it's the executive branch. We are giving them, I say we, but I don't mean we. I mean the people that are putting this budget forward and who will vote for it, are giving authority to the governor to find $50 million in new fees on mostly business people across our state. $50 million. And an abdication of our responsibility in this chamber, in my opinion. Sections 338 through 339, this is a great section, something I've advocated for since I've been here, the elimination of the business entity tax, something that basically is an anti-business signal. It says if you want to start a business, well, we're going to start you off with this fee. And that's great, except at the same time that this fee is being eliminated, there's another section, 344 through 346, where we raise the recording fees for the same people. Haha, gotcha anyway. Once again, the corporate surcharge is extended. This is something that was supposed to sunset. We only need this money temporarily. This legislature told the businesses in our state, and yet it's extended once again. Then there is Section 305, which seems designed to put a specific company in this state out of business. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but what this does is it eliminates the ability for companies that provide services for the elderly in our community by finding them qualified help that have been background checked and are capable of doing the job properly by changing the law so those companies can no longer put a non-compete agreement on those home care workers. Basically, you're putting them out of the business when you do this. The non-compete agreement they have is incredibly simple. It just says, look, we're going to hire you to go out there to meet these people and take care of them and have this contract. We don't care if you work for someone else. We don't care what you do. But that customer belongs to us, at least for 6 months. I don't think that's a lot for them to ask in their contract. I also don't believe we have a right to be sticking our nose in that contract in a state budget. What about millennials? The first reaction when I see this budget is the mountains of debt that we are creating for people that will have to pay it in the future. Is that a reason for anyone to want to stay here in Connecticut? To know that we have the highest per capita debt in the whole country and it's only going to go up based on this? Newsflash, when you graduate from college, if you stay in Connecticut, you're going to owe us more than any other state you might move to. Great reason to stay here. And then I think, what about jobs? For all the reasons I mentioned above and plenty more, do we think that there's going to be more job opportunities in Connecticut as a result of this budget? Those opportunities are certainly going to shrink. Taxes on digital downloads increasing from 1% to 6.35%, already mentioned. That's just a money grab. That's looking between the seat cushions for more revenue. Sections 86 through 90 are very concerning. This is very similar to something that happened a few years ago where we refinanced some of our pension liabilities in the state. And you know why they were refinanced? To shorten or to reduce only the short-term payments so that it would be easier to balance the budget. But you know what the problem with that is? It adds mountains and millions of dollars more debt onto the citizens of the state in the future. In this case, it's reducing the payments a certain amount, but it's adding $15.6 billion more dollars on future taxpayers in this state. What about everyone else? Seniors, the many, many people that I talk to all the time who are considering leaving this state. I don't know about the rest of the members in this chamber, but not a day goes by where someone doesn't mention to me that they are considering moving to another place. There are social media pages dedicated to people leaving Connecticut. I work in real estate. I've been a realtor, since, shortly after I graduated high school. And when I first started, no one ever said to me, Rob, I want to talk to you about selling my house because I want to move to another state. Once every few years, maybe. Now, it is the majority of people I speak with. Clearly, this is a problem. And we can't sustain this. And we certainly can't sustain the monstrous appetite of this government without people here working and paying taxes. So the question is, will this budget make any changes that might cause someone to reconsider moving out of the state? Aside from all the things I've already mentioned that are sure to damage businesses and eliminate opportunities, all of the taxes are going to raise the cost of everything. Every product and service will cost more as a result of this budget. The pass-through entity tax was already mentioned. It was invented presumably in a response to fixing, that terrible Trump tax cut that exposed the fact that the people in this state are paying too much in taxes. And the result is Connecticut's going to get in on the game, and we're going to collect more taxes too. In Section 15, we're continuing the terrible practice. I keep saying we. I should stop saying we. There is no we. I'm not going to vote for this. But this budget in Section 15 continues the process of diverting money away from the Special Transportation Fund. I could go on for hours just discussing everything that has happened regarding transportation funding in this state since I've been here. Make no mistake, there's also going to be increased property taxes resulting from the additional burdens placed on towns in this budget. And every cut in aid to towns, education or otherwise, is going to mean higher property taxes. There's a new sales tax on things, even safety items like car seats. In fact, in Connecticut, it would be a lot easier to list the things that are not taxed than the things that are. E-cigarettes, alcohol, increased taxes. I guess they're easy targets like they were in previous budgets. But I'll remind everyone of the hypocrisy of that. Every time those taxes are raised, the argument that is made by the people proposing it is, oh, we're trying to cut down on those people, the use of cigarettes and taxes. Those are bad for you. But this budget relies on the income from those taxes. It's blatant hypocrisy. Line 335 is the implementation of an actual exit tax. I heard it described as a mansion tax. Yes, it only applies to very, very expensive homes today. But just wait. This is a bad sign, ladies and gentlemen, of what's coming. People in this chamber are realizing that folks are moving out of this state. And this is the reaction. Let's tax them. You know, this is not just a penalty for people leaving the state. It also says to anyone that would think about moving here, don't you dare. They're going to get you. The used car trade-in fee, this was created in the last cycle because, again, what haven't we taxed already? Oh, I got an idea. Let's tax used cars. What is the policy behind that? Except we need the money. There is no policy. And now, because it's low-hanging fruit, let's make it $100 instead of $35. Is that going to help promote the businesses that are in the sales of automobiles in our state? Of course it's not. Certainly ones on the border are going to be especially at risk. There are loads of new policies in this budget, some things that were never debated before, some things that didn't get a public hearing. There's changes to other policies that were not discussed. Sections 99 through 102 have to do with the retirement security account, which I'm just waiting for the people in the state to get a wind of when it actually happens. But this is a program where you're going to be forced into having a savings account. There's changes being made to that here. Sections 258 through 260, they put more money for school readiness and daycare programs. That sounds like a reasonable thing, except the money is tagged in the budget only to go to the employees. But that's not what this money is for. The money is to create more slots for more children. Think about that for a second. Who's really benefiting from this budget? There's the framework for the public option is in this budget. There's also 5 pages of earmarks. 120 of them in total. $3,311,000 worth of earmarks. My dear friend and successor in the House, Representative Mastro Francesco, did a great job on the House floor last night discussing some of these earmarks. And she was made to feel terrible because she dared to ask, what are these things in here? What is Access Educational? What is the Artist Collective? What is Hartford's Proud? What is Citadel of Love? What are these things? Where is this money going? Are they legitimate places for money to go? Yesterday, I brought an amendment to this chamber for a real problem, and that was, and I will take just a second because I know it's not a budget-related item, but I wanted to help out people who are U.S. citizens that live in our state because they can't take the driver's license test in their own native language, Vietnamese and Albanian in particular. And I was told there's not enough money for that. These people are going to Massachusetts to get driver's licenses because they can't do it in Connecticut. I heard the good senator and chair of the Appropriations Committee say that we hired 5 interpreters in this budget. But those people, I guess they're out because we got $3 million plus in earmarks here for God knows what. And I'm sure some of those things are good, but it makes me wonder what our priorities are. Are those items more legitimate, more important than the thing that I brought to this chamber's attention yesterday? I don't think so. The question is, what is wrong with the state? What is the problem? Why do we have a deficit? Why are we losing population? Why are residents moving away? Why is Connecticut known to be notoriously hostile to businesses? There are loads of reasons. Many of them are contained in this budget and previous budgets. This is just more of the same, bringing us down the same tired path. And it's likely to result in another huge deficit, what will be addressed with, guess what? More new taxes. And it's not hard to figure out the answers. If I had to pick one phrase to boil it down, what's wrong with Connecticut? We are simply not competitive. If you ask your constituents, what's wrong? They will tell you it's not a secret. Everybody knows. It's too expensive to live here. There are too many taxes. Energy costs too much. Many of our friends and neighbors are asking themselves, can they afford to live here any longer? Businesses say it's too expensive. We hear it every day. That's not a secret either. So why does this budget make it even harder to do business? I have even had business owners approach me in confidence and say that they fear us. Can you imagine? And who can blame them when they have to be concerned about the next thing this state government will put upon them? College graduates, same thing. Ask them why they are not staying. It's too expensive. There's not enough opportunities. No matter who you are, no matter how much you love this state, you cannot help but recognize that we are not competitive. So let's talk about that. If the problem is that it's just too expensive to be here and there are too many taxes and regulations, then the answer must be to work on those problems. How do we do that? It's simple. You can ask just about anyone and they will tell you. We need to start by making it clear that you are not better off in South Carolina or Texas or Florida or even Massachusetts or New York. Whether you're a single person or a growing family or a retiree or a small business or a large corporation, we need to let everyone know that we are going to make Connecticut the smart decision. Everyone here knows what the problems are and how to fix them. It only requires the will to do so. We need to address our long-term obligations. Yes, that means reining in our public sector employee unions and the pension debt that is threatening the financial future of our state. I was hopeful, Madam President, that the change that we made that required affirmative votes on the union contracts that come before this chamber would give my colleagues in the majority pause, and that those contracts would receive even more scrutiny than they had in the past. By my count, Madam President, this body has passed something like a dozen more of those contracts. And that itself has increased state spending by $100 million. It also means $100 million in more taxes and more reasons for people to not want to stay in our state. How is it possible that we just spent $100 million on those contracts, given the clarity of our financial situation? That's not what my constituents are asking for. More than anything, if you ask people in my district, what do? They will say the same thing: cut spending and taxes. That's what they ask every day: cut spending and taxes. Where is the cut spending and taxes in this giant 500-plus page document? This budget does the exact opposite. It spends close to $1 billion more each year in new spending. And every dollar that's spent is got to be paid for by some mechanism of revenue, taxes. So there you go, Connecticut, another $1 billion each year in taxes. I don't need to know another thing about this budget. That's no right there. Not voting for it. I've made the same commitment every year that I have been here. I will never vote for a budget that raises taxes or cuts aid to the towns that I represent, because those cuts simply translate into increased property taxes on a local level. This state spent and taxed too much when I was first elected the first time back in 2010. Coincidentally, the same exact year that Governor Malloy was elected. And I have watched and I have voted no on every budget since then, except for one, and that was the Republican budget that was offered in 2017 that passed 2 years ago, and it's because it did those things. No tax hikes and no cuts to town aid. Unfortunately, Governor Malloy vetoed that budget, and it's too bad because it was a tremendous start down the correct path. And I wonder what things would be like if we were living under that budget now. But sadly, every budget that's passed since 2011 has raised spending and taxes substantially. And they were also every one of them, out of balance on the day that they were passed. Everyone knew that there was going to be a deficit the day they were voting for that budget, and yet they did it anyway. I've heard some mention that there are policy reasons for these taxes. And I'll repeat, what's the reason? We need the money? That's not a good enough reason. The only way forward for our state is economic growth. That's it. It is the only way we're going to create jobs and opportunities. It's the only way to encourage businesses. And it's the only way to get people to choose Connecticut. It's also the only way we are going to manage to pay off the long-term obligations that haunt us. And that growth is only going to come with public policy that makes our state more competitive, more attractive for people to live, to work, to retire, to start a business, run a business. That comes from reducing spending and taxes, cutting regulations, lowering the cost of living, the exact opposite of everything that has been done over the last 9 years that I've been here. For me, I don't believe that there is more than one way to fix this problem. There are only the ways I just listed. Last session, as was mentioned, with bipartisan support, this body passed the compromise budget, as it's called. Now, I didn't vote for that budget, but I don't want to get down on my friends and colleagues who supported it. I couldn't vote for it, but I completely understand the reasons why they did. Times seemed desperate. The governor was threatening massive cuts to education and town aid, and it was an opportunity to have some Republican initiatives included in a budget document that otherwise would have just been more tax and spend as Governor Malloy had a history of. That budget did some good things and it did some bad things. The good things were really good. A spending cap, a bonding cap. We vote on contracts now. Those good things, particularly the spending cap, are sadly being circumvented in this document. And the bad things continue to haunt us. The bailout of Hartford for $500 million, money for the XL Center, the elimination of the $200 property tax credit, a tax on basically everyone who owns a home across the state. Think about all of the houses and count the $200 every time. That was the burden that budget placed on the citizens of this state. And sadly, even though Governor Lamont promised during the campaign that he would get rid of that, it's not. It's still the policy in Connecticut. It has not been restored. And yes, I have it in me to compromise. All of our constituents want us to work together, but I don't think that means that they want me to vote for bad policy. I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to find the common ground. But what I won't bend on are the principles that I believe in or the responsibility I have to my constituents. In this case, there is no viable compromise, not on this document. Compromising would only mean moving away from the correct solution, as this budget does. I wish I had taken the time over the last 9 years to write down the comments that were made each time the budgets were passed. Which one of these budgets over the last 9 years? Or is it this one that's going to be the one that actually fixes the problem? No. Madam President, this budget will not be the one that solves our problems. We will be back here in no time addressing the same issues with more deficits and passing more Band-Aids, more corporate welfare, more taxes. What we need to fix this mess that we are in as a state is a much harder thing to accomplish. And sadly, our ability to actually pass meaningful reforms in a budget were dramatically reduced when the labor deal was passed in early 2017. This budget is in direct contradiction, Madam President, to the message we need to send as a signal to businesses and citizens that Connecticut has a bright future. I have said in here several times just this session that every bill that we pass needs to be measured against whether it makes us more attractive and competitive as a state. And if the answer is no, then the vote should be no. This budget is also in direct contradiction to my beliefs in Republican and American principles. It just feeds the monster that has become our state government. And I cannot vote for it. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, sir. Will you remark for